Good morning, everyone. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to basically use Procreate as a beginner. I'm going to show you how to import images, how to create layers, and how to use drawing tools over top of your images, and then how to export those images after you're ready to share them. So I'm using an iPad Pro. I have an Apple Pencil here, but I have used a smaller non-Apple tablet in the past with just like a Logitech stylus. And so the equipment that you have doesn't really need to be super advanced. You could use pretty much any tablet you have. Procreate, I believe, is only an iOS app. However, there is another app that is free called Adobe Sketchbook, and that is very similar to Procreate. So you should be able to use that on non-Apple tablets as well, in case that is something you're interested in using. While that one downloads, I'm just going to open up Procreate and show you how I use it. So you can see when you first open it up, it comes up with a bunch of tiles, and these tiles represent works that you have already created. So for me, I have been using the iPad to create drawings for quite some years, so I have a lot of drawings in here. But for you, you may not have very much, and there might just be this little box that says untitled artwork, or there may not be anything at all. So depending on what you see, what you can do is to start a new file is just click on this plus button here, and it will give you some options for what size of file you would like to create. For example, you can create one that is an A4 page size. You can create a photo size. I'm just going to go with the screen size, which will take on the exact resolution of the screen that you're currently working on. So whatever tablet you have, whatever screen size it is, that would take on these dimensions. If you want something different, you can choose from these options, but I'm just going to go with this one. And it will create a white space that I can draw on. Now, if you pinch out, you can see that you can zoom in on your page or move it around. And that can be useful if you want to zoom in on details while you're working on something, which I have often done in the past. But I'll just show you around the interface a little bit. Up here is the context menu. So if you click on gallery, it's going to return you back to this page. And if you just click on the canvas that you created, it will bring you back, and you see it fills the screen. So if you've pinched out and you don't know how to return back, you can always get back to it that way. This little wrench bar is your actions panel, and this will allow you to add and insert files, change aspects of the canvas. This is the canvas, this white bit. You can share and save your image files. You can create a time-lapse recording of what you're drawing. That happens automatically, so if you ever wanted to share that with somebody, you could. And then there's a bunch of other preferences here that you can change depending on your personal style of drawing. If you're right-handed or left-handed, you can change this accordingly. But the one that we're going to focus on the most is inserting a photo. So oftentimes when we're in Procreate, what we want to do is draw over top of something else, like a reference image. So this is the most useful thing. And if you go insert a photo, it's going to bring up your photos from your iPad. And you may not have what you need in your photos. So I'm just going to show you how I bring in, images. So usually what I do is I share my images to a folder on my Google Drive. And so if I go into my Google Drive folder, you can see I have a whole bunch of different random files, but I'm going to go to my Procreate drawings folder where I've saved some things. I'm going to go into a project that I've been working on, and I'm just going to bring in this image. So this is just a base image that I prepared as an example. And if I go over here, I can download, and you'll see it says it's saving to photos. So now when I go back to Procreate and I go to the wrench and I go insert a photo, that should be the first thing that pops up in my photos. So now I can select this, and as it imports it, it will automatically try to maximize its dimension to fit on your canvas. If you want to resize it, you can use these handles on the side to do that. If you wanted to make it smaller or bigger, whatever, it should kind of snap to the edges. You can also use your fingers to do this. So if you pinch, you can change the orientation and all of that good stuff. If you want to reset that, just hit the reset button down here and it will bring it back to this orientation. If you're happy with its placement on the screen, then you can just basically click on some other tool and it will deselect it. If you wanted to select it again, then you would go to our arrow over here, which is the selection menu, and that would reselect the topmost layer that you have on your screen and allow you to manipulate it. So you can see you can do a uniform scale, you could do a freeform scale, which would mean it doesn't scale according to the dimensions, but that it allows you to transform it in a freeform way. I'm just going to reset that. You can distort and warp images. That's probably a little bit more complex. I don't really use those tools in Procreate. And you can flip images, you can rotate them, you can fit to canvas, etc. So if you ever need to access that, it's this little arrow selection menu. There's also this, which allows you to make smaller selections. For example, if I draw something here, you can see there's a dashed line that creates a selection of this image. And if I touch it with my finger, it's acting like a drawing tool as well. If you are ever making selections, that would be the way to do it. You can make rectangular selections. You can see it's sort of like masking this right now. I'm just going to go back and clear off those. You can clear them off the selection by just tapping again so that it's not highlighted. Once we have an image in our canvas, we want to create a new layer. I usually create a couple of layers. One I call the trace layer, and I'll usually fill that with a color. And it will automatically pick the color that's in your color selector up here. So if you want to choose white, you can take drag your pen all the way to the edge to a white color. There's also a place where there are palettes. I have a bunch of different palettes loaded. There are places where you can change value. There are different ways to look at color here. I'm just going to go right up to the right corner here and choose white. Then I'll go back to my layers, touch on this little icon that indicates what is in the layer, and go fill layer. So it's going to fill it with a white background. And this little N here, if you click on this little N, you can change the opacity of this layer. So if I slide it down, I'm probably going to make it around 50%. And that basically recreates the effect of drawing on a tracing paper. So as if I had this photo printed out and then I took a bit of tracing paper and put it over top so that I would be drawing on top. If you want to rename a layer, you can click on it with your tool and go rename. I'll call this trace. This doesn't always work that well, so sometimes I need to go into my keyboard and just do it myself like this. So then you can create another layer, and this could be your drawing layer, so where you're actually going to create your line work. And this is the brush tool up here, the brush library. This is a smudge library. This is the eraser. And again, this is the layers, and this is the color. So it's very simple. There's not a lot of options here. I have a lot of brush palettes loaded that don't come with Procreate. So the ones that are inherent to Procreate, they start here with this one called sketching, inking, drawing, painting, etc. And there are a bunch of different tool options that you can see inside. But I'm going to keep it quite simple, and I'm going to just use the technical pen within the inking palette of the brushes. I'm going to use the technical pen, and I'm going to select a black color as my pen color. And now on this layer, over top of the trace layer, I can begin to make marks. Now, if you want to go back or undo what you've done, you can use the undo button here. If you want to change the size of your tool or its opacity, you can do that with these sliders over here. So I'm going to increase the line size, the point size, and I can begin sort of drawing or tracing over top of an image. So let's just say I was trying to get in some of this background context as a base. I can draw freehand like this, very loosely. If you want to create straight lines, you can draw, and then at the end point, just hold your pen, and you see it straightens it out. So if you're interested in doing straight lines, just hold at the end of the line. So drag, hold, and wait till it straightens out. And then you see you can move that straight line wherever you want. It's not until you release your tool from the screen that it will draw the line. Now the eraser tool is basically going to take on the characteristics of the tool that you currently have, I believe. So let's just see. Okay, it's on this, I have it on a different thing, but if you click on the eraser tool, you'll see more details, and you will see, you know, you can choose basically what you want. So if I chose this as my eraser, that is how it would be. You see it's creating smaller lines. You usually want to increase it so that you can have like a really good way to erase. And then the undo and redo buttons over here are very useful. You'll get used to them quite easily, and you'll never be able to draw with your hand in an analog format ever again, because you will always want to undo the line that you just drew. Okay, so let's draw a couple more lines here. If I go back to my brush tool, I'm on the technical pen, my color is black. I am going to draw a couple lines here. I'm just going to make them straight. And let's say for this space, I was trying to add in a few more elements. So I'm going to highlight these arches here, and I'm going to create a canopy here. I'm following the lines of the perspective of the image so that you can see that the lines correlate to the other lines of convergence within this view. So let's just say I'm going to create a canopy like this, and I'm going to open up this space. And it's going to be an art space. Now it depends on what type of pen or stylus you're using, but the tip can be pressure sensitive. So if I draw very lightly, you can see it creates a thin line. If I draw pressing down a lot, it creates quite a thick line. So even if you don't take the time to resize the nib of what you're using, you can still get quite a range of line weights as you're drawing. So let's add a few more context details here. I'm not going to be too careful about these lines. Now here, one of the changes I want to make is I want to make this accessible as a space to the outside. So I'm going to add some layers of seating, and that's going to be like tiered seating out front. So I'm just going to link it up like this. And we're going to create a new garden space here where this path is. Not being too careful about these outlines, I just want to get some space in. And we're going to cut out a few garden areas along these edges as well. So just draw this a little more carefully. Maybe we'll have a little garden planter there and a planter here. Now you may find that you prefer to draw on multiple layers to keep things organized. What I like to do is draw my lines on one layer, and then if I'm adding color, I will add it on another layer and maybe I'll put it underneath the line work. So if you want to move around a layer, you can just hold it with your stylus and move it down below another layer. And that way the layer hierarchy, the line work will be on top and your colors will be underneath. Now you can also do this just by using your finger. You can move things around like that, but I always use my stylus. So if I wanted to add some color, I might go into my painting brush library and take a look at some of these cool options. I like the look of this wet acrylic brush. So I'm going to choose a color. I'm going to choose something on the bright yellow side. And I'm just going to test out to see what the brush looks like. And if I'm happy with it, then I will, make adjustments to the size of the brush as necessary. So maybe I want to highlight this with some color. We're going to give this old factory a facelift. And maybe inside the space, it's going to be a different color. If you want to quickly fill a space with color, if you have a line work outline, you should be able to simply drag and drop a color. Oops, let's go back to where I was. You should be able to drag. Now, this is on this color layer, which doesn't have any line work on it, so that filled the entire screen. But if I was on my line work layer and I went back here, it would just fill this space. As long as the lines don't have any gaps in them, you can fill by dragging your color into the palette. Now, I don't want to do that, but if I did want to do that, that's how you would. So let's see what else I might want to add here. I'm going to go back to my drawing and pick one of these interesting looking. That's cool. So I'm going to draw in some planting in the foreground here. I'm going to do a big green space here. And I'll just use my eraser. I can choose the same brush as my eraser. So what was I on? Painting. Well, I'll just pick this one. So you can see it takes on the characteristics of the brush that I've chosen. So if I want a more rougher edge, I can erase like that. And then I'll just draw in some other plants, some plant shapes, maybe some bushes, some shrubs, some flowers. You can see that you can quickly transform a space. I think I'm going to move this color layer over top of my line work and see how that goes. You can quickly transform a space just by adding a few lines and some colors. I'm just experimenting with a few different types of brushes here. Now you might not see these color palettes. These are palettes that I have loaded myself. You might see something more akin to this, so you'll have to go in and select, but it will tell you your history of which colors you have used in the past. So I can see the white, the black, the yellow, the magenta, etc. So you can always kind of use this as your way of choosing colors instead of me going into these little palettes that you see here. So I'm just using a variety of different brush types and strokes just to see what they look like. And if I wanted to add some highlights, maybe I want to indicate some different types of planting. I'm going to just reduce the size. I can do that here. This image is not based on a realistic planting plan or anything. This is just a quick demo to show you guys how I use these tools. I like to just explore a lot of different brush options, like just to see what interesting marks they might make. Let's go into painting again and see. Maybe this would be interesting. Yeah, if I wanted to add some texture to the building. That would actually make a good road texture or concrete texture or something like that. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about blend modes. So if you go on this little N again, obviously you can change the opacity now, but there's all of these different words down here, and this is basically called a blend mode. So this will take whatever information is on the layer you're currently on and sort of blend it in different ways to the background. So for example, if I want to see my line work, I might do darken. So as you can, if you just pull down the list, you can see the different impacts that these blend modes have, and you can see how they interact with the layer below it. Some of them make it quite bright, some of them make it quite dark, some of them seem to be more transparent, some of them are more opaque. Darken basically takes the layer and makes the dark lines underneath show through, but you see you lose some of the lighter colors here. So another option for what I want to do is to put this back underneath my line work, and I'll set it back to normal, and then I will make my line work multiply, and you'll see that now you can see the line work through what you've drawn. So depending on how you're drawing, this may or may not be desirable for you, but it is important for you to know that there are these options for how to blend different layers together. So this will kind of help you understand the importance of keeping a layer hierarchy. So knowing like, where are my lines drawn? Where is my color drawn? And that might help you just sort of organize things a little bit better. So I'm just going to show you a few drawings that I've done in the past and the way that they have been set up on the page. So let me see if, so let's look at this one. This is a sketch that I created in preparation for creating a rendered image. And if I go into the layers palette, you can see there's a whole bunch of different layers that I've used. For example, I have the shadows on a separate layer. I have the white fills on a separate layer. I have some of the detail lines on a different layer. All of the green and planting is on its own layer. The urban details and tree details are on their own layer. And this is just to help me because sometimes you need to place certain elements over top of other elements. When you're creating a sketch like this, the more layers you have, the harder it is to remember which ones you're supposed to be working on, but I do try to keep them organized in a way that makes sense for the drawing I'm doing. You can see these are sort of like the background context layer lines. Then I have all of these hardscape fills. That's my trace paper layer. And if I was to turn all of these off, you would see just this background image, which is just a Google screenshot image from Acapulco, which is where this particular project was located. But the changes that were made, I'll just show them to you in layers. First, I just colored in the background and tried to indicate some different types of paving, expanding the public spaces along the edges and sort of eating into these roads. Then we have the background context details, so you can see now I'm introducing a bioswale along the edges of the road, so transforming it from a completely hardscape area into something with a little bit more functionality in terms of water movement in the city. And then I've added in some planting indications and some street trees. You're seeing, like, I'm just going to zoom in for you so you can see. I'm not trying to draw with accuracy exactly what type of plants are here. It's up to you how detailed you want to get with your drawings as you're creating them, but I like to do just enough to give the indication of what I'm intending without getting too caught up in the details. Then I've added this layer of color using a variety of different brushes and colors to sort of highlight the interventions of the space. I've added in some coloring to the building and some of the buildings in the background. I've added in some details of the vendors inside this little market and some tables and chairs. Again, I'm not this is not a very detailed or complex sketch. This is just enough to give you an indication of how it can be used. I've made a little white fill there, and then I've added in some shadows and details at the end. And that's basically, how I put together a very fast and basic sketch. I'll show you something that is maybe a little bit more complex. So let's take this one, for example. This is a space in Toronto, and it is going to be a highly developed space. And with this one, I have everything organized into a variety of different layers as well. I'm going to turn off the layers and just show you how it starts. So in this particular case, I actually started with, I even have more layers up here. I have them grouped into boxes. Okay, so in this particular case, I actually started with a rendering. And that might seem like a counterintuitive way to begin a sketch, but a lot of the time, when people see a rendering, they think about a space as being completed and finished, and they no longer feel that they have a voice in changing or altering how the space looks. So sometimes, even when you have a very detailed idea about what some of the design elements may look like, it's better to go backwards and to bring in that more visionary quality that you see in a sketch. So, for example, if I just have the landscape layer turned on, I can add in details and textures that are much more evocative of this scene than are visible in the rendered image. So in the rendering, you have to worry about everything being unified, the colors being unified. You have to add in people at all the right scale. When I'm doing a sketch, I can remove some of the extraneous details that don't really need to be there. So I can use the people that I have as a reference. I can trace over top of them and show the lines. I can trace over top of these elements, but I can add in more to the sketch, and it looks more unified than the render actually does. So, and also, I think that for engagement sessions, people respond better to sketches than they do to renderings for the reasons that I mentioned. They don't like to think of spaces as being completely finished before they've had a chance to give their input. So let me turn back on all these architecture layers. So if I turn off the landscape, you can see the work that goes into the sort of background of this architecture. So this type of sketch could take me eight hours to do after I've like already made the rendering. So sketching is not always a shortcut. It's not always the fastest way to do something, but sometimes it is the most evocative way to do something. So I'll just turn back on the landscape layer. And you can see how this works as a scene. I'll just turn these off and show you the rendering again. So this is the rendering. This is the sketch. So I think that sketching and practicing digital drawing has a place, even if you have the skills to do 3D models and to create renderings. Sometimes it's actually better to go back and do a sketch instead of a finished rendering. So just bear that in mind, that sketches can be really compelling pieces of visual narrative and can reach people in ways that architectural renderings sometimes miss out on. I'll just show you a few more examples quickly. This is from the same project, but a different area. This is from a different project that I was working on in British Columbia, which is a Terry Fox memorial. If anybody doesn't know who Terry Fox is, I can tell you all about it. He's a famous Canadian figure, very inspiring. And that's actually where that monument is located, is his hometown. Here's another project that I worked on also in British Columbia for the Williams Lake First Nations. This is a site of a former residential school that has been turned into, or will be turned into, a commemorative memorial space. And this is from the same project, but an overview of the site. So you can see in this one, I used a lot of very soft brushes and soft colors, trying to get more of a watercolor look. And I think that's the power of digital drawing, is that you have the power to use a bunch of different illustrative methods using the same stylus. So you don't have to invest hundreds of dollars in different types of watercolor or pastels or pencil crayons. You can actually do everything just with this one drawing program. A lot of times the work that I do involves drawing over existing conditions and trying to envision what they can look like with some design changes. So that can be really a good way to use sketching. Other times I do sketches in preparation for an architectural render or a landscape render. So in this case, I had prepared I'm just going to turn off all of these and show you what I started with. So this is actually a sketch over top of an aerial Google Earth image. This sketch was done in Miro. So this is a client drew over this and kind of indicated where they wanted different spaces. And this was the view that was selected. And so before I went ahead and did any 3D modeling or visualization in my rendering program, I created this sketch. So I used a variety of layers, as you can see again, to sort of indicate the different areas, outlining these like salt flats and shrimp ponds, the development, and then of course, Bob and Wanda, our flamingo friends. And after they saw this, they were like, yes, you can proceed with the 3D modeling and the visualization stage. So sometimes I use a sketch to communicate the intent of what an image can be transformed into. You'll see these in week 3. These sketches, sometimes we use sketches as didactic tools. So we're taking a background image and we are drawing over top of it with new comments. So in this one, let's see, if I turn that background image off, it's just a background image that I brought in as a reference, and then have used my tools to just create little annotations talking about different qualities within the space. So you'll see that in week 3. This is another one. This was an example that I created when I was designing the module, I sent this to the learning designers to transform into a walkthrough. So this is sort of like a diagram of what I wanted them to create. So sketching can also be used as a diagrammatic tool. Yeah, and I do a lot of sketching for clients to help envision spaces that they're seeking investment for. So they may shop these images around to city councils or different funders and say, like, this is a vision that we want to create. And after they get a certain amount of funding or have been able to convince people that this is a good idea, then they'll move forward with a more expensive design of a space. Okay, so I hope that covers how you can use Procreate and how you can bring in a reference image and draw over top of it. I'll just open up Sketchbook just to show you quickly what that looks like. So in this one, the canvas is vertical for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe that's a feature that I have set on right now, but I can just like grab the canvas and rotate it as to what I want. Your selections for brushes are all over here on the side. So you have brushes, you have pens, you have fine liners. There's less options here, but they still get the job done. And you can, I believe you control it by dragging up. Yes. So if you drag up on opacity or drag down, it's a little bit less intuitive, but you can see that it creates, it changes the style of the pen tip. I'm just going to undo. You can add an image by going to the import image and navigating to your file system. So that should take you to your folders. I think that's if you want to insert a file. This is if you want to insert an image, it will take you to your photos. And again, if we do that, it's going to do almost exactly the same thing that Procreate does. So it's a little bit of a different way of organizing the menus, but you can get, almost the exact same results by drawing here. You select your color by clicking within this color picker area. So it works quite similar. If I just tap on this pencil, I can choose a variety of different things. So let's go with the tattoo inker. That looks pretty interesting. Yeah, you can adjust everything as you see fit within this little panel. So I won't go into too much more detail about that because I think it operates very similar to Procreate. So you can explore those options for yourself, but hope that this tutorial is helpful for you. I guess the last thing I need to show you is how to export an image. So if I go back to Procreate and go up to my untitled artwork, so let's say I wanted to save this, I'm finished with my image, I would go to the wrench action and I would go to share, and I could select any of these options, but I'm just going to choose JPEG. Usually what I do is save it to my Google Drive, and I put it in a folder where I keep things organized called Procreate Drawings, and I will just create a folder for whatever project I'm working on and save it in there. So let's just start a new folder called, I'll put on my keyboard here, tests. And then inside here, I can go save here. I can double click on this to change the name. So let's call it test 1. I've noticed that sometimes if you don't have the .jpeg extension, it doesn't show up, even though it does save as a JPEG. So if you've erased that part of the name, maybe just remember to put it back in. And then we go upload. And now if I go to my Google Drive and I go to that folder where it says tests, you can see that it is there now. So I can then, if I have Google Drive, on my laptop or on something else, then I can just download it from here. So I find that to be the best way to sort of save drawings that I'm working on and use them between different devices. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hope this was very helpful to you, and let me know if you have any questions.